AOC does not want Joe Biden. She represents the quote-unquote Justice Democrat wing of the party, the radical wing of the Democratic Party, the wing of the party that Nancy Pelosi has derided as having about 3 people. But she does get all the publicity. She's going after Joe Biden. She's apparently deciding between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders right now. If she endorses Elizabeth Warren, that could, in fact, be a death knell for Bernie Sanders' lagging campaign. Yesterday, however, her chief focus was going after Joe Biden, who she certainly doesn't want as the nominee because he's, quote-unquote, too moderate. Here she is slamming Biden over his supposed middle-of-the-road stance with regard to climate change.
I will be damned if the same politicians who refused to act then are going to try to come back today and say we need a middle-of-the-road approach to save our lives. That is too much for me. We cannot, and we will not accept anything less than a solution to save ourselves. And that's exactly what this is.
Okay, so that is a slap at Joe Biden. Joe Biden responded by saying, no. She's not slapping at me. Everyone took it as a slap at Joe Biden because it basically was. I mean, Joe Biden himself was booed when he was mentioned as having supposedly said that he had a middle-of-the-road stand on climate change. Now he says, I'm not middle of the road. Guys, I'm far left. Like, just love me. Love me.
I've never been in the middle road on the environment, and I tell her to check, the statement that I made and look at my record. She'll find that nobody has been more consistent about taking on the environment and a green revolution than I have. And so, look, anyway, but I can't, I don't think she was talking about me.
He doesn't think she was talking about him? Yeah, Joe, she was talking about you. And if you think you're going to escape so easily, I mean, he sounds old there. He really does. And it's a problem for him because the new vibrant wave of youthful Democrats, they've got all the passion and all the moves, and they're hip and they can dance. They're really not going to accept the John Lithgow figure that is Joe Biden when it comes to their full push for socialism. And Joe Biden, again, he is trying to escape the ramifications of the fact that he is moderate enough to win a general election, but too moderate for the excited wing of his base. And that does make a difference, right? If your base is not super excited about you, if they are mostly motivated by how much they don't like the other guy, they better hate that guy with a rampant passion. And they better feel like it's an emergency. Like if the economy is good, and if things are generally okay in their lives, and they just don't really like Trump very much, I'm not sure that is enough to get them over the hump. That means that you have to have one of two things, either broad public appeal or a very, very excited base, right? Donald Trump barely got over the hump against a candidate the Republicans loathed, Hillary Clinton, because there was a segment of the base that was super excited about Donald Trump. Okay? I'm not sure who in the Democratic base is super excited about Joe Biden. They hope that he has broad appeal. The problem is that he may have to choose between the broad appeal and the very excited base. You know, the people who are going to go knock on doors, the people who are going to spend their days phone banking. Are those people going to do that for Joe Biden? It's a serious question. And AOC, Bernie Sanders, they're ripping on Joe Biden about this. Here's Bernie Sanders, subtweeting Joe Biden on climate change.
When you're dealing with the future of the planet and making sure that our kids and our grandchildren have a healthy and habitable world in which to live, I don't know how you go too far. I mean, this is an existential threat, not just to the United States, but to the entire planet. We have a moral obligation to combat climate change, to bring the entire world together. This is not an American issue. This is a global issue, to bring the world together, to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energies. And to me, we don't have a choice.
We don't have a choice. We have to not elect Joe Biden. It's the only way. So this is Bernie Sanders' pitch. And also it's Bernie Sanders who's pushing Medicare for all, a proposal so popular with the Democratic base that all of the fence sitters like Kamala Harris have come down in favor of it, at least when they're not against it. Joe Biden, however, has said that he does not support turning Medicare into a national health insurance program for everyone because, quote, the vast majority of people are satisfied with their own health care system today. He said he favors making a Medicare option available to all people in which you'd be able to keep your own insurance if you are satisfied. So he is in favor of a, quote, unquote, public option. But the problem with the, quote, unquote, public option is that if people are opting into Medicare and doctors are not taking Medicare, well, then you're not going to be getting very good care through Medicare. It's one of the reasons why people like people like Bernie Sanders, who are Medicare for all proponents, have said we need to eliminate private health insurance as an option because too many healthy people are going to be buying private health insurance. And that means that Medicare for all is going to be incredibly expensive. Basically, the only people who are going to get Medicare for all or Medicare for a public option, are going to be high-risk people. So the government absorbs the cost for all the high-risk people. The reimbursement rates are too low. Those people still can't get care from the doctors that they want. So we have to force everyone into one giant pool via Medicare for all. The question in health insurance is always risk pools. And the problem is that if you bifurcate the risk pools into healthy people and non-healthy people, and the non-healthy people end up on the government dole, and the healthy people all end up getting private health insurance, then the government ends up footing an enormous, enormous burden in order to get those people health care in the first place. So that is why the Joe Biden plan has largely been opposed by Democrats. On the other hand, it's been opposed by Republicans, the public option, because there is the looming risk that public option quickly turns into Medicare for all, because the government can also subsidize at a rate that no one else can. So you could see a world where the government starts subsidizing Medicare for the public option, and everybody simply dumps their private health insurance. Employers start dumping private health insurance and tossing people onto the Medicare rolls, and private insurance industry dies, and then doctors are basically roped into de facto Medicare for all. So Joe Biden has picked the least popular option. The public option is actually the least popular option. There's Medicare for all. Hardcore Bernieites love that. And then there's private health insurance without a public option, and Republicans are generally in favor of that. And then there is the public option, which is so unpopular that Barack Obama couldn't even get a public option through his own party. Right? He controlled the Senate and the House. He could not get a public option through his own party. That is Joe Biden's position, because he's quote-unquote moderate, and why you can't trust the media. Now, speaking of the consequences of all of this, I think things could get a lot worse. So it's not just that protesters descended on DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen's home. It turns out they are also threatening DHS employees' children. DHS employees have been warned that there have been credible threats made against both them and their children in a system-wide email that also went out this weekend from the department's deputy secretary, according to Emily Zanotti over at the Daily Wire, which also included a list of emergency services and security protocols along with information on how to access the department's security force. Quote, this assessment is based on specific and credible threats that have been levied against certain DHS employees and a sharp increase in the overall number of general threats against DHS employees, although the veracity of each threat varies. In addition, over the last few days, thousands of employees have had their personally identifiable information publicly released on social media. So, is this the fault of Democrats who are ratcheting up the rhetoric? Now, I'm not comfortable with saying that Democrats who are ratcheting up rhetoric are responsible for threats of violence or for violence itself. Unless you are overtly calling for violence, as Maxine Waters appears to be doing, then I'm not going to blame you for violence that takes place. However, is there any question that the social fabric of the country is decaying in real time? We're watching people tear it and set it on fire for political benefit? No question about that. And is it also true that as the tenor of public debate grows and grows, as the fiery rhetoric grows and grows, that there are unbalanced people who are going to do unbalanced things? It was a year ago, like literally about a year ago, that a Bernie Sanders fan decided to go shoot up a congressional baseball game. I know we all forgot about that, but he attempted to murder as many Republican congresspeople as he should. That wasn't Bernie Sanders' fault, but it is indicative of the fact that we are raising the temperature. And when you raise the temperature in the country, you can't be surprised when some frogs get boiled, right? The tenor of the country right now is really, really ugly. Protesters outside Nielsen's home are apparently unsatisfied that Nielsen and the Trump administration insist on enforcing immigration laws, even as the administration reversed its policy on separating detained adults from their minor children while they await an asylum hearing. Not only that, there's a story over the agents about leftist protesters who were attempting to basically storm an immigration facility in McAllen, Texas on Saturday. According to Fox News reporter Griff Jenkins, about 200 protesters from the League of United Latin American Citizens were bussed into the McAllen facility from all areas of Texas. At one point, when a bus carrying illegal immigrants tried to leave the facility, the protesters surrounded and stopped the bus. However, during the melee, a Border Patrol agent attempting to control the crowd was injured while protecting an older woman, Jenkins reported, according to the Daily Caller News Foundation. That agent suffered a broken ankle, Jenkins said. During the incidents, protesters screamed, "Set the children free," and "Shame on you" to Border Patrol agents, who eventually helped maneuver the bus out of the facility. It was unclear where the bus was headed. A U.S. Customs and Border Patrol spokesman told CNN the immigrants on the bus were being transferred to the custody of ICE agents. Again, things are getting violent and ugly out there, and they're going to get more violent and more ugly when you have people who are exaggerating the case. So you have a bunch of celebrities who have decided that it's imperative for them to go down to the border and grandstand on this issue. They're not making intelligent arguments. They're not interested in making intelligent arguments. They're not interested in reason. Instead, we are getting a bunch of celebrities going down to the border so that they can pose with signs, so they can prove to all of their fans just how generous and wonderful they are. So Lena Dunham has decided to go down to the border. So she and Sia, I don't know how anyone could tell it was Sia because she still had her hair in front of her face, and Amber Heard and other stars visited the border city of Tornillo, Texas, to protest the Trump administration's policy. So in this picture, you can see, it's kind of hard to see them because they're wearing hats, but you can see Amber Heard, I believe, is on the upper left there. You can see Constance Wu. You can see, let's see, who else? Bella Thorne. You can see, I believe, is it Anna Kendrick down there as well? Believe so. Sia shows up. Again, you're not going to recognize her because of her crazy hair. And then Lena Dunham, of course, is there as well. So you see a bunch of folks on the left from Hollywood who have decided it is necessary to...
And the powerful have pitted white working-class Americans against brown and black working-class Americans. Is Reaganism in the 80s when he started talking about welfare queens. He's painting this like really resentful vision of essentially black women who were doing nothing, that were sucks on our country.
Freshman Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio Cortez targeting her progressive ire at the President Reagan, President Reagan, suggesting the 40th president pushed racist policies. My next guest was a longtime aide to the president, both during and after his time in the White House, and he says Ocasio Cortez does not have her facts straight. Mark Weinberg is also the author of Movie Nights with the Reagans. Mark, good evening to you.
Good evening.
What was your reaction when you heard the freshman member of Congress make those comments?
I was appalled and I was angry, and Reagan would have been angry too.
Why?
Because it isn't true. There couldn't be more untrue, and it took a lot to get Reagan angry, but this charge was one that would have made him so. He was raised from being a little boy to treat people equally and not to look at people on the basis of color. And for anyone to suggest otherwise is wrong, is dishonest, and is just not true.
She had quite a crowd there watching her deliver that interview on the stage, and a lot of people heard those words. What do you want to tell them about someone you came to know so well?
I did, and I talked to Craig Shirley, his biographer, who's written 4 books about this, and the two of us couldn't believe it, that this myth is still in existence. And I would want people to know that Ronald Reagan never looked at people on the basis of their skin color. He appointed the first African-American national security advisor in history. The first Hispanic in the cabinet was a Reagan appointee, and he didn't evaluate people on that way. And it just isn't fair to say so. It's an old, worn-out, false myth.
In fact, you said that he would have quite a reaction during his days in office when he was called a racist.
He was, and this is something that came up from time to time in articles that portrayed or suggested he was a racist, made him mad. And in private, he'd have some salty words about those stories, never in public, of course. But that would make him angry because it wasn't true, and he felt it in his heart. It was something that was just essential to his personality.
When you see what's happening in politics today and coming off a weekend where we saw comments like that made, what do you think that we would hear the former president, Ronald Reagan, say about politics as we know them now?
Well, he would be very disappointed, and he would tell people to do their homework and check their facts and not be so interested in personal publicity, but getting it right. I think it would disappoint him that it's gotten so mean-spirited and so personal, but the first thing he would say is, be accurate.
Really great to have you tell those stories and some of those first-hand accounts of getting to know the former president.
Thank you, Sandra. Good to be with you.
Well, this story has gained some traction. Congressman Ron DeSantis out of Florida, running for governor in Florida, in fact, slamming the New York congressional candidate Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. That remark leading to a fiery response from her and some others on the left. And Congressman Ron DeSantis is with me now from the Hill. How are you, sir? And good morning to you. Thanks for spending time with us. We should note that we have repeatedly reached out to Ocasio Cortez, and we hope she will take us up on our invitation. Where's this going? Because the comment on tape that seemed to catch fire was this girl or whatever she is.
Well, so it's not about identity politics, Bill, and I would note she referred to herself as a girl from the Bronx on Stephen Colbert's show. She said Trump can't handle a girl from the Bronx. So that's just political correctness run amok, but it's a way to obscure scrutiny on her views, which are socialist, and they're wrapped in ignorance. In Florida, Bill, we have more people, probably than any other state, who have fled socialism. Places like Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua. We understand socialism doesn't work. And when you're justifying it by saying that the unemployment rate's low because people are working multiple jobs, it just shows you don't know what you're talking about. But one of the reasons I brought that up in that campaign stop was because she had been slamming Israel repeatedly throughout her campaign, but she was talking about the Israeli occupation of Palestine. But there's no Palestinian state. There never has been a Palestinian state. She was asked to justify those views, and she couldn't justify her views. So if you're slamming one of our strongest allies, and you're doing it based on really no knowledge whatsoever, I think the socialism and the ignorance is a toxic combination.
We've been waiting to get you on. I appreciate you coming on today and responding to that. Now